ask underscore Ezra underscore. So I think it's it's all of them, all of the social media, which is never really the case. But um, so where to find me was question one. What was the other questions? What do I have going on?
Yeah, what do you have going on? Tell us a little bit about yourself. What makes Ezra tick?
Adenosine triphosphate. That's a chemistry joke. Sorry. Um,
I love it.
the
I love it. For those who understood it, we're laughing together.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm a man with too many jobs. I am a writer, I'm a performer, I'm a educator, I'm a coach, a chemist. But Yeah, I'm most excited about this book that just came out recently, which is The Path Through, a book on poetry and paintings on the subject of trauma. So that's really exciting, and it's a book I wrote with my mother. So it's she did the paintings and I did the poetry. You can't really see the poetry, but um maybe we'll get into that a little later. But yeah, I do life coaching, I do intimacy coaching, I write poetry, and yeah, that's kind of the short of it. It gets longer, but I don't want to bore people.
For intimacy coaching, that's always something that has intrigued me because I've had a number of conversations with people about that. And it seems to be something that to some degree is a little bit taboo. It's a little sensitive. It's a little hush hush. It's a little bit Ezra. We don't talk about that unless the doors are closed, the blinds are drawn, and all the locks on the door are locked. But how did you get involved in that space? What are your thoughts
Yeah,
about it?
that's a good question, and I love, the framing of we only talk about it when the doors are closed, because I have a podcast where, the Ask Ezra podcast, and we just do intimacy coaching on the internet where the doors could not be more open. But I started and I sort of was having this crisis of it's not identity, but like I just wasn't there wasn't like enough meaning in what I was doing on a day-to-day basis. Like I had this sales job, I was doing like, presentations and traveling and organizing symposia, and I was like, eh, it didn't really like speak to my heart or my soul. And so the question was, how can I take what I've already learned how to do and how can I apply that to something I'm really passionate about, right? And so I had been in the BDSM space for 10 years by then, and I went to my local BDSM community space called a dungeon, right? And I said, you know, do you guys want a director of education? Like, I can help you like get educators to come to the table and create programs that could really be awesome. And so I did that, and I started that right before the pandemic. So that was really strange because the intention was to have instructors come from other cities or locally and present in this community space that we had, but all of a sudden that was no longer possible, and so we did classes every other day. I'm sorry, every other week, virtually, and it was like everybody discovered that they were kinky over the pandemic because they had nothing to do but sit around and think about what was hot. So that was great, and that sort of started me out on a journey of serving people in the kink community, and I realized that there was a much larger need, and so instead of just being a BDSM coach, so to speak, I sort of expanded to become more of an intimacy coach, and really a focus on niche sexuality and gender experience. So, those are the things that I kind of wish I had had in my 20s. And I could have, like, it could have saved me a lot of suffering because I didn't think that that was something that was, people wanted. And, or like that I was okay, or like there was a way to do it with community and risk aware way. So that's really what I'm passionate about.
There's someone that I knew very well, and she and her common law spouse at the time was into that, and she would highlight all these kinks and she discussed the community. And one thing that I really appreciate about the conversation I had with her as well as her spouse, oh sorry, her common law partner, was that they made it seem like an everyday thing, right?
Mm,
They made it seem, for lack of a better word, normal, right? Whereas maybe some people on the outside, they looked at it as, oh my God, you do that. Oh my God, you do this. It's so, and they're like that image of the three monkeys, right? Where it's like, I hear no evil, I see no evil, and I speak no evil. But I really appreciated the conversation because it was eye opening and it made me realize that what they're doing is maybe a little bit different, but it's not something that is like forbidden, that is like this big, evil, scary thing. And another thing that made me realize is that I thought that I was like a freak. I'm nowhere close when it comes to the experience and like the creativity, I would say that goes into that. For someone
yeah.
who's on the outside looking in, do you come across that where those who aren't a part of the community is looking at it as like, ooh, Ezra, you do that? You have those kind of conversations?
Yeah, no, it happens that, and I think it's interesting to think about like what is normal, right? And there's something called the Kinsey report, which is like our earliest modern survey of sexuality, right? And he found that 50% of people bite during sex. Okay, that's one of a nearly infinite list of fetishes, right? So just one of those things cuts it in half. So half the people do it, half the people don't, right? Everybody's kinky. Everybody's kinky in one way or another, right? I mean, but for some people, it's really important. Other people, it's not so important. Some people, the things that they find attractive are pretty mainstream. Other people need to build a large community in order to find anybody who's into that thing. Did you know that breasts are not inherently sexual? So if you find breasts arousing, that's a fetish, my guy. That's a cultural um, sexualization of a body part, right? And so we can poo-poo people who think that like armpits are sexy or people who think that feet are sexy, but really it's just less popular than, the sexualization of breasts or abs or whatever.
Oh, I absolutely agree. When I met a girl who was into biting, and it was one of the first times where I actually met someone that was into something that I do. And I feel kind of like vulnerable here because I'm opening up and hopefully no one holds this all against me. So,
Yeah, there we go. What is it?
right?
15 minutes in and we found your kink
Right?
terrain.
We found my kink. So, when I found this now, it was like, okay, this is how it feels when it's done to me. But she was like aggressive with it, right? And I would
Yeah.
leave with like marks and things of this nature. And I'm like, I'm thinking, is this what I do to others? Right. Because now you're getting it done to you. So now you're on the receiving end versus the giving, right? And it's kind of funny to think that you have two people that have, because you mentioned 50-50. So the
Yeah.
chances of you meeting someone who has that type of kink isn't that small. It's quite likely, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think that if you were going to say one thing that distinguishes the kink community from people who don't think of themselves as part of that community, it's the communication, right? And what this came out of was some of these activities have an inherent danger to them, have an inherent risk to them. And so it makes sense to have like herd intelligence where we say, okay, this is how we're gonna reduce the risk. Like something that's really common these days is like a choking fetish, right? Um, the kids are doing it. You got people who are not even like legal adults who are choking themselves or choking each other in the bedroom, and this is something that can lead to death, right? I mean, it's pretty obvious you can die that way, and even beyond that, you can injure yourself. And there are ways to reduce that risk. There's ways to simulate it or do it for a small amount of time or do it in this way or do it in that way. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but it makes sense that if the activity that you're interested in involves risk, then we should have a conversation about that risk. And the public school sex education system does a terrible job about having an honest conversation about the risks involved in sex, because they just want to say, don't do it, or wear a condom, and that's the end of the conversation, right?
Yeah, I remember my sex education teacher, and he was so uncomfortable having the conversations about sex that when he there's a topic about like masturbation, right? Either self masturbation or mutual masturbation. And he would always look at the door like someone's going to break in and arrest him for having these conversations. And I look at him, like I look back, and in hindsight, with like, let's say, with the dynamics of men and women trying to navigate how to interact with each other in the landscape of the work, I can maybe see that perspective where he didn't want to come across as maybe harassing or sexualizing teenagers.
Yeah.
Um, but when I look back at it as well, like even just him looking at the curriculum, which is approved by many, it was to your point, don't do it. But if you're going to do it, make sure you have this, make sure you have this, make sure you have this. And it was very what's the word I'm looking for? It was like that movie Dick and Jane, where they said, okay, Thursday at 8 p.m. we're gonna have sex. And it was like Monday.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Right? Very planned, no room for error, nothing along those lines. So for you, you have introduced this to our audience and to your audience. You speak about it. It's a part of your brand. How important is your brand overall to you, and where are you taking it in the future?
Oh, what a terrible question to have to answer. It's an excellent question, but oh, what a mess. No, I mean, I think that so I do have kind of a branding problem, if you will, and it comes from this like explosive popularity that I got on TikTok. It was like 50,000 followers in the span of a month, and really engaged audience. And what they responded to was this character, Sir Ezra, right? So I would consider myself a lifestyle dominant, which is to say, like, in my sexual experiences, I prefer to take a dominant role, right? I prefer to be the one in charge, making the plan, making the choices, right? It's all consensual. I'm not interested in taking power over people. I'm interested in empowering my partners, but also leading, right? Um, and people really responded to that, and they were like, "Oh, really cool! Look at that! It's a dominant." But then it also made me like a target for a lot of projection and a lot of attacking. And it's like you can have a problem with dominance, you can have a problem with power exchange, you can have a problem with a culture that makes it easier for men to dominate women than for women to dominate men. I'm not any of those things. I'm a person, and I'm playing a character. And so it's it's tempting once you get some notoriety under a specific character to like just show up as that character, right? But The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, is not just The Rock. He's also a person, and he's also an actor, and he's also a parent. He's also like somebody's husband, you know. So you can get mad at is all you want at The Rock, but it's again, in the end of the day, it's a character. And so, that's kind of my burden, my cross to bear, if you will. I do enjoy playing the role of Sir Ezra, but in the end of the day, I'm Ezra, right? I'm not Sir Ezra. I'm Ezra. Uh, Sir Ezra is a character that I play on TV and in the bedroom. So, um, but in terms of where do I want to take it, right? Um, there's been a common thread of the people that I worked with. The people that I worked with are almost all seeking help coming to a place of acceptance. And I spent a lot of time thinking about like what is the common thread? What is this acceptance? What does it really mean? Where does it come from? How does it get hung up? And how do we get past that hang up and help people feel more accepting of their sexuality, of their gender, of their experiences? And so I developed a coaching methodology called radical sexual acceptance. And it's really exciting. It's we've been doing a clinical sexology research project to explore how effective it is and in what ways is it effective. And the data that we've been collecting is really exciting. It's really positive. The trends are really strong. And I'm not in a position to publish those trends yet, but I can tell you it's been really encouraging and I've been able to like make a difference in a lot of people's lives really quickly, which is really exciting. And that's radical sexual acceptance. I am still accepting uh, applicants for participating in the research study. And if you wanted to visit and find out more about that and see if that study was right for you, it's tinyurl.com/start RSA.
Perfect. The information, and I know that you're still working on it and there's not much you can share, but the results that you saw and the impact that it had on the people involved, were you surprised or was it something that you ultimately expected based on your own experiences?
I mean, I think I expected positive trends. I don't think I would have been following the lead if it was like half the people hated it and half the people loved it, right? But what we're seeing is basically people took a number of psychological assessment tests, and then we did 4 once-a-week sessions, and then they took the same tests and I was able to compare each test and say, what's the difference after a month? And a month of coaching is not a lot of coaching. I mean, most people, when they engage with a coach, they're looking at 3 to 6 months, maybe as much as like a year and a half or something. But it's not like therapy. Therapy kind of like goes on forever. Coaching is not that. Coaching is like, let's get you oriented into the right way so you have the tools and you can move forward, right? Um, so a month is not a lot of coaching, but I mean, I'm seeing like 90% of participants experiencing certain results, which is like really exciting. So, I mean, again, I'm not in a position to like state those things because you need a certain number of tests before you can make a statistical significance kind of claim. But it's, I mean, I've got I think 38 participants through, and I mean the idea that being able to step in and provide like no cost coaching and really help people accept their gender and sexuality on that scale in the last couple of years is really exciting and encouraging, and